Hey, it's Lucas Melicroft here, CEO and co-founder of Tribune. I've got an amazing guest with me today, Brian from ITECH Solutions, based over in California. Hey, Brian.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining, man. I'm super looking forward to not just this particular LinkedIn Live session, but also the sessions coming up into the future. So for the viewers today, just want to give you a bit of a clarification on why we're doing these sessions and what we're trying to achieve. As you might be aware, obviously Tribune, we were an MSP running Crofty for many, many years and have been in the MSP industry for over 15 years now. And the platform we've developed is try to help innovate and push the MSP industry to the next level. Now, when it comes to, I guess, this type of conversation, we want to really have what we call the MSP, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's nothing under the hood. We want to just be really raw and have an open conversation. This would be something I'd typically have with an MSP, or in this case, Brian, face to face over a coffee. But obviously, as we know, we cannot come to America, which is where we're meant to be living right now. And no doubt, Brian can't leave his house, or not too far away anyway. So we'll get into that in a sec. So this is really a no bullshit type of conversation. We want to be as raw as possible, and just to see how we can help not just each other, but also the entire MSP community moving forward. So I want to just kick off, Brian, and I'd love for you to just to jump on in, if you don't mind, and just, I guess, tell everyone who you are, a bit of a background, how long you've been running your MSP for, or how long you've been in the industry for, how big your team is, and the type of clients that you service.
Sure. So we're ITECH Solutions out of San Luis Obispo, California in the US. And we started in 2005 as essentially a break-fix IT company. And when the recession hit in 08, is kind of when we moved to our MSP model, where you're kind of using fixed rate contracts versus the hourly billing. And that was really a challenge that we turned into an opportunity, in the sense that, we were looking for fixed income. Our clients were looking for fixed expenses. We wanted to get rid of the peaks and valleys and the unknowns. So we went to our clients and proposed, putting them on this new fixed rate contract, and got our first RMM in 2008, and called ourselves a managed service provider. It took about a good 8 years after that, 2016. That first part of being an MSP, we didn't grow nearly as much as we've grown since 2016, primarily because we had this mentality of, we're in this box, we have competitors, we've got the secret sauce, we don't want to share any of our ideas. And so it kind of stinted our growth, because, we had tools that we had designed in-house that we were using. We actually had like a makeshift PSA that we designed ourselves. We had a web development department, so we had programmers on staff. So we were kind of like coming up with our own tools for our problems. And it wasn't until 2016 when we outgrew those tools and weren't able to keep up, with the new additions we needed, that we realized, wow, there's this huge MSP community out there, and there's already tools. Why are we reinventing the wheel? While I say we started our MSP in 08, it wasn't really till 2016 that I feel like we matured to a point where we were able to scale and grow. The other challenge we had is we're in a small market, so San Luis Obispo. The county is about 100 miles, and there's only 250,000 people. As far as scalability in a small market, that can be difficult. We did grow organically fairly easy, being a big fish in a small pond. But that was another thing that I realized after 2016. We started looking at outside markets. I can get into a little more detail about some of that recent growth, but kind of fast forwarding to today, we're a 13-person MSP. We currently manage about 60 clients across 2,500 devices, and we're focusing primarily on the co-managed space right now, as well as government. We had our own security incident / breach in 2018 with an RMM platform that really caused us to stop and pause and rethink, how we're servicing our clients and kind of what our baseline security looks like. So today, our baseline security package is probably what the average MSP's advanced security package would be. So that's why it fits well in the co-managed and government space. And we just finally hit the 2 million mark last year. So that was a nice little milestone. And we've been just seeing tons of growth opportunity, even through COVID, with the space that we're in right now.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like I really want to dive into, I guess, what the last 12, 18 months looks like. If I was to go back a second, really key point around, you mentioned in 2008 you transitioned from the whole traditional break fix to MSP. There's two points there. One is how big was your team at that point in time? You're doing break fix, so was it just you and a couple other staff members doing those break fix scenarios?
So I'm going to talk IT only, because we also had a web department, right? I'm excluding them from the conversation because they don't do IT. So we only had 3 guys on our IT team, me included, and moved to the managed service model with the fixed rates. We didn't move to it overnight, right? I mean, we had maybe 10 of our top clients that obviously liked the idea, but there was a transition phase of a good 2 to 3 years to finally get everyone moved to that.
Yeah, cool. Which just takes time and effort and figuring out all the business models and how it's going to work, and then getting your engineers to follow the new processes. It's just that's business in general. Any industry, since it's a change, that definitely just takes time. And so you fast forward now to 13 team member following the managed services, and congratulations on the 2 mil mark. That's pretty stoked. No doubt you and your team celebrated when that happened. Is there is a lot of it recurring services these days, but off the back of MSP, or do you still do a lot of projects to make that 2 mil mark happen?
So yeah, last year's numbers worked out to be 73% MRR of that 2 million. And so naturally the remaining is projects and products. And then of that MRR, we had about 40% of it, because we do bill by line of business, and we track things by line of business. So we actually separate out our support costs, like our fixed support costs. They show up as a separate line item for our clients, so they know that that's only support, especially since it's only 40, maybe 45%, of a given invoice. We don't want them to think the whole invoice is all support. Yeah. So naturally we look at that MRR and break it down. Okay, what is the MRR made of? So it was about 40% support across the board. And then we compare that to like our service delivery team cost. And naturally we want to make sure we're profitable on that, right? But the other 60% is literally reselling tools, right? Whatever the client needs. Nowadays with the security stack that we should be delivering to our clients, there's several items that they should be paying for, and that, of course, when I say tools, includes like Office 365, for example, right?
Yeah, that's right. And if I jump back a sec to the incident that happened in 2018, correct me if I'm wrong here, the tool that you were using, the RMM tool that had a breach, which obviously affected you and your customers, similar conversation to what's happened recently with SolarWinds, or is that was it as devastating back then?
So 2018, it was kind of the early days before it was well known that MSPs are getting targeted, right? So nowadays you hear all about it, and there's webinars, discussions around how to, clean up your own house so you don't become a victim, right? Let alone a target. So at the time, we were actually in the process of moving from one RMM to another. And the reason we were moving is because the old RMM we had didn't support MFA, right? We had about half of our clients transferred off of the old RMM, luckily. So we only had about half of our client base hit, but that's still a lot for an MSP to deal with, right? Half of your clients all getting hit with ransomware at once. So it definitely didn't hit the news. I did have a PR firm on standby in case it did to help with that. But because it was in the early stages of no one really knowing what was going on, it wasn't something that got picked up, right? And I think the other thing that really helped us is we were very transparent with our clients and very communicative with them. We communicated well, in the sense that they didn't feel like we were leaving them out in the dust. They felt like we were taking care of them. And even though it took 2 weeks to remediate that whole client base, I mean, we had a majority of them up that first week, but you end up with some stragglers that you run into trouble with. We, out of the 35 clients that got hit, we only ended up parting ways with 2 of them. And one of which we were kind of already, planning to part ways with. So it kind of just sealed the deal. So it, from a PR standpoint, was it like SolarWinds? No. In fact, not many people even know it happened. I do educational seminars locally with our chamber and try to teach client companies about security. And it's one of the stories I tell. I have no shame with the fact we were targeted and hit. Same thing could happen to you. And I tell the story of what it was like to go through that, right? So the long and short
of it, out of your hands, right? So you can't do much about it when it's out of your hands.
Yeah, and so the long and short of it is we were on par to do 1.8 million that year because of the breach. I don't want to call it a breach because they didn't steal any data necessarily. No data was exfiltrated, but we ended the year at 1.5 million. Right. So we were on track for 1.8, ended at 1.5, and we had a negative profit margin of almost 120K that year. So it was detrimental to our growth and obviously our profit that year. I had to borrow money to, make it through the times. And since then, 2018, 2019, into 20, luckily COVID didn't happen that same year. We've kind of been crawling out of that hole, right, and restructuring how we do things. And we actually went 2 years where we didn't take on any new clients at all. We just focused on hardening our existing clients' infrastructures and our own, because what I realized is what made us survive that, other than the money I borrowed, was the fact that we did have, I think at that time, about 55% of our income was recurring MRR. And I realized that I was focusing too much on trying to get new business and not enough on securing our existing business, right? And so that was the stop and pause. Let's secure our existing income we have before we worry about taking on new income.
Such a valuable point right there. And I think if you look at the whole landscape of business security these days, and I feel like you have to try to convince businesses they need these products to stay secure. The thing is that it hit you personally. It affected 35 customers, right? And so you've got to you take the positive out of it. You've got a great story to be able to compel to these organizations that why you need security in your business. And yeah, okay, it was completely out of your hands in this case, and it was a tool that you used that got hacked, and maybe there could have been something you might have been able to do to try and solve it. Most likely not. But it sounds like you did an amazing job, and especially to still be here today. There was an incident here in Brisbane, Australia, where a hosting provider got hit, and they were hosting thousands of customers' servers. And when they got attacked, literally their entire business went bankrupt overnight because there was no way of coming back when you got thousands of customers gone, and literally their data and backups and literally clients' businesses have disappeared overnight. There's no way coming back from that. And so, even though it was a really unfortunate situation you went through, I guess that would have taught you a lot of lessons. And you're here today to tell the story, which is amazing. So good work. Is there any particular pinpoint around backup, right? Because backups are obviously a key when these kind of attacks happen. Did you have a good backup system in place for these clients to get them up and running within 2 weeks? Because that's an amazing job to have everyone up and running, or 35 customers up and running within 2 week time frame.
Yeah, so I mean, that's ultimately why I feel like it would have taken less time if we had the backup solutions we have in for our clients today. You know, we were using an image-based backup that was backing up to like an on-site NAS, and then it was replicating to like a USB hard drive for like your off-site for those clients that didn't have cloud backup, which was at that time kind of the majority of them, because that was another thing hard to sell, you know, in the earlier days is cloud backup. It's much easier now, but ultimately it was restoring those images. Now we didn't have our primary backup available, because when they got in with the level of access they had, they were able to disable the antivirus that we had and locally and destroy the backups on the NAS. So it was literally relying on that secondary USB hard drive that was also replicating, you know, the NAS that the threat actors luckily didn't know about, or maybe didn't have access to, that saved the bacon. We did have one client, actually two clients, one of which the backups weren't usable in their entirety. And it was just because back then we didn't have what we have in place now, where we actually test our backups, you know. And then the other client had a volume that wasn't getting backed up, that was supposed to only be an archive that there is a separate copy of, but they were also using it to store new data. So, you know, we weren't even backing it up because we knew we had like an offline archive of it. But when you use an archive location to put new data and, you know, and it's not backing up. So we did pay the Bitcoin for two, you know, of those clients to restore them. Yeah.
And luckily back then the Bitcoin would have probably only been like $7,000 or $8,000, not like it is today.
Yeah, so I bought, you know, this is back before insurance companies have a Bitcoin broker in their back pocket to help you with the purchase. So part of our struggle was I bought $50,000 worth of Bitcoin to be ready to pay if we needed to. And at that time, it was trading at 8,500 a coin. And we ended up, for the two clients, I believe, paying about 20 grand total worth of Bitcoin to get that back. But that, luckily, that was the first thing our insurance company reimbursed us for. They have no problem paying the Bitcoin because they know that's a quick and easy fix. You got your data back.
Yeah, it's good that the insurance company came to the party, because there are some insurance companies around the world that we've seen not come to the party in this situation. So that was definitely handy. We've paid for in our MSP business, we've paid 4 Bitcoin ransomwares now for customers who have been, you know, when their backups up literally get destroyed as well when they don't have a offsite cloud backup. So it's so crucial to have that in place. And in fact, even one at Christmas time, just before Christmas, one of our MSP clients, because of COVID scenario, and we'll get into COVID in a sec, they the whole company was dispersed, which means the person that was swapping over the hard drives for a backup purpose, because they didn't have good internet in that location, hadn't done it in 6 months. So the latest backup that hadn't been corrupted was 6 months previous. So it just goes to show you definitely need good security in place, and then also good backup practices in place, which sounds like you're ticking all the boxes. I'm really curious though, you're from a town that's somewhat smallish, you could call it, 250,000 people. I'm assuming there's more competitors in your field in that one particular town. What made you decide to not just focus in and really dominate the entire town, but also then start pushing outside of your own town?
So so when we talk about town or city, as we call them over here in the U.S.,
county, sorry.
Yeah, or county, right, is what I was talking about earlier. So San Luis Obispo City only has 50,000. It's the whole county that's 250,000, which is made up of, I think, 7 or 8 cities. So it primarily came down to it's a big small business community where we're at, which is good because we have kind of our own little micro economy. You know, when the recession hit, you know, it didn't affect us as, you know, badly as other large cities. We don't really have a lot of larger companies in our area because it's a high cost of living. and large companies tend to need employees, and it's harder to have a labor pool of readily available in a lowly populated area that's also a high cost of living, right? So really what it was is it was us maturing to the point where the $500 a month clients weren't cutting it anymore. There's a lot of administrative overhead, and we needed to find those $5,000 a month clients, right? Or even higher. And so that's really where we had to start getting into the co-managed space and work with some of those local larger companies that had IT in-house to be able to, capture some of that business. And ultimately that led to us going out of market because these larger companies also had multiple offices. One of our co-managed clients that we've had for, I think, 5 years now, they're nationwide. They have offices all out throughout the US. So it helped build our confidence in the fact that we don't have to only service, clients locally. We can do this remotely. And then also something that we realized too is that our security stack that was actually a little overboard for small business. They didn't see the value in it. It was a harder uphill battle to sell that to them. And even if we did sell it, typically it was phased out over a long period of time. So we realized that for the level of baseline security we need our clients to have, it really takes going after a larger client who's already got an IT budget, right? Who already has at least some understanding of the value in security, and is willing to have those discussions without talking about price first, right? Smaller clients tend to be always focused on price, and larger clients tend to like to focus on value, right? And so that's how we sell our services, is by value. Price is typically one of the last discussions we'll have, with a new lead.
Yeah, it's great. And I think we'll jump on a whole topic just around pricing structures and even just on all the security offerings today. But I think we'll leave that to a separate section. I'm really curious to understand how COVID has affected yourself you mentioned you're in a smaller city, in a smaller county in the US, and obviously the US has not fared too well through the entire COVID period, the last 12 months. I'm curious to understand you from a personal standpoint, you and your family, how have you guys coped throughout the process? And then obviously from your business, your MSP, your clients, and also your engineers too, right? Because it affects each and every one of us.
Yeah, so from a business standpoint, luckily we had spent a good 2 years since our breach getting our house in order, where ultimately we embraced the Microsoft stack, moved anything we had in-house was moved out to the cloud, preferably with some sort of web-based application where we're not having to manage our own servers. And so we were already set up in a manner where we didn't have to be in an office to work. So for the team, it was very easy for us to just work from home, essentially. Now, we do have a culture that can negatively affect, right? When you're all used to working in the office and now everyone's working at home, depending on personalities of different engineers. Some people love it. Some people wish they, were back in the office. So we definitely identified the fact that, hey, we need to make sure that even though we're not all in an office now, that we're still interacting on a regular basis. So we set up 2 regular calls, Monday morning, Friday morning. We call it the ITECH Cares meeting. And it's just a Zoom call, half an hour. You hop on. I tell people, don't talk work. Like, this is just a hangout. I'm literally paying my employees to just hang out like they're in the break room and talk, and talk about. So the idea is like Friday, it's like, hey, what's everyone doing for your weekend? And what do you and then Monday, it's like, hey, how was your weekend? So kind of those check-ins. And then Wednesday, we have our team meeting, which was already in place that got moved to Zoom. So that's kind of a midweek touch where the whole team is hopping on a Zoom call. So definitely that regular touch. And then my leadership team, it was a challenge too, because we had started we were still working on it, but implementation of EOS and building out a leadership team. And that requires a lot of meetings, right? There's a lot of strategizing, understanding who's going to do what role. There's accountability involved. So we ended up kind of breaking out we used to do kind of 2 long leadership team meetings a week, and we broke it out into 4 smaller ones, Monday through Thursday, so that we're in a meeting for an hour, at least 4 days out of the week, talking leadership things. And then we themed them, right? So it'd be like Monday could be operations, Tuesday could be HR, Wednesday, actually, I'm sorry, we do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Those are the 4 days because we have our big team meeting in the middle. And then we have like a client success focused one, right? Let's talk about how we can bring more value to our clients. And then the other one, of course, is finance. So with that, that's worked out well because we're feeling like we're getting time to talk and see each other every day, and it's helping keep that connection. And then we started other cool things like game nights. A lot of my employees play video games, Steam fanatics, right? So it's like, then we schedule twice a month a game night, typically on a Friday or a Saturday night, and we'll be together for 4 hours playing games, together and kind of just interacting that way.
You just gave me a really good idea because pretty much everything you mentioned is exactly what we implemented straight away with COVID too. And game nights, obviously, engineers, tech guys, they love playing these online games, and they try to get me involved at some point. And just kind of like over my head, it's not my thing. But like MSPs competing against each other, I'm having this conversation, and everyone seems to be doing the same thing with their engineers. And it's great for collaboration, communication, bringing your team together. But what about MSPs playing against each other to see who's the better gamer? That's a great little contest. Could be a good option. From a COVID standpoint, with it sounds like your culture, you plenty of meetings. That's all on track, and obviously mental health is definitely key. So you're definitely all over that. What about your customers, and how's that affected you? Your revenue? How's it affected? I guess in the first, typically what I've seen, including us, the first 3 weeks when the entire lockdown happened, it's like we all just immediately thought we've lost our businesses, everyone's lost their jobs, like it was panic stations. But then obviously government help and things started to get back to somewhat normality, or what we see as normal these days. How did it affect your customers, and how did you, I guess, go through that mentally to ensure that you're going to keep your business, and then your engineers, that they had a job to come back to?
Yeah, so it was kind of sad when it happened for us because we had just spent the past 2 years, restructuring, and 2020 was like the end of 2019. My leadership team and us, we were like, all right, 2020 is going to be our year, right? And so it was definitely a little disappointing that we may not have the year we thought we were going to have. However, I think we, in understanding that we spent the past 2 years kind of hardening ourselves and our clients, and with security and getting things set up to where we can sleep better at night, we kind of just immediately naturally took that same focus. It's like back on our existing clients. And one of the first things we did is we created like this client health sheet, we called it, and where we tracked different variables about clients, where we had phone calls with them, Zoom calls, and we're asking them questions like, hey, trying to find out how they think this is going to affect them, right? And in our area, it's big on tourism, so naturally the hospitality space took a big hit. We have about 25% of our clients, at that time, in the hospitality space. So we wanted to quickly identify what's our potential loss of income in the near future, and then also what are those clients that maybe are getting through this fine and still are status quo and want to do projects, right? Because we were worried about our project pipeline falling, because that is kind of that's the income you can't depend on, right? And so we wanted to keep that full, and then we also wanted our clients to realize like we're there for them. So we did some campaigns on the PPP loan and the CARES Act and all of that, really helping educate our clients. We were pointing them towards resources, helping them out. We have a lot of clients in the hospitality that went down to like 50% operations, where literally like half their staff is gone. which means they're also using half the amount of devices. So we worked with them to not necessarily give them a discount, because we don't want it to come off like we make so much profit, we can give you a discount and still afford it. It was presented in a way that, hey, we charge you per user per device on a management contract. We understand you're using half of those now. So let's temporarily, turn those off. We don't need them running, and then we can lower your bill. So we haven't lost any clients, thank goodness, or seen any of our clients go out of business. We have seen some scale back that are still scaled back, and we've worked with them on that. But on the upside, we saw some of our clients actually going through growth mode through COVID and wanting to grow, and some of them even acquiring other companies. And so that really boosted not only our MRR to make up for those other clients, but also project work. And so it kind of, I wouldn't say it overbalanced itself out. In fact, in the sense that we still grew. In fact, we hit our 2 million mark, right, in 2020. Like, we didn't even think that was going to be possible, and like, here we are. And so our MRR and our one-time still grew, just focusing again on our existing clients. We went literally almost a whole year without taking on new clients, and still grew. And there's a lot to be said about that, in the sense that growing an MSP isn't always about trying to get a new client.
That's amazing. And I think there's a lot of that could be a really good open conversation with a lot of other MSPs, because you're right, there's always a focus on getting new customers in. And there is conversation about, like what you said, we should focus on our existing clients first. And that is always a conversation, but just doesn't seem to actually go into fruition, right? And it's always like, but you've actually taken that mindset, which I think is just amazing. And you've seen, your organization grow because you're there to help your existing clients get through the shitty situation, but then also come out the other end and help them support their entire business as a whole, which is awesome. If this last 10 years seems like you've gone through hell and back, and you've now come to the other side, which is just great to see. And you've got plenty of learnings that we could definitely take offline. We'll have a half-a-day conversation on. I'm curious to know what you see then internally in your business. What is working? Let's rephrase this. What's one thing in your business that you think or you wish would be better, or there'd be something that you implemented where you'd have better outcomes from a particular, either it's a tool, or rather it's an icon, it's an actual item in the business, or it's an engineer, or it's a process. Is there anything particular that you'd love to actually see in your business that would be better to then add more value to your customers?
Yeah, so we're 13-person company, and we're definitely heavy on the management side right now. We actually have 5 people technically on our leadership team. One of them is our service delivery manager, who's technically also part of our service delivery team. But where we were seeing most recent growing pains is certain people being bottlenecks in the company, me being one of them. And so I look at kind of our growth as an MSP, and one of the first things I did as we were growing and got to a certain size is it was all about getting rid of the stickiness between my clients and me personally. I needed to get my clients to start learning to depend on my team and to not always have to come to me for things, right? And then once you get past kind of that maturity level, and you've got your team as a buffer between you and your clients, is really when I feel you can start looking at growing and maturing a leadership team. And where I see this leadership team now is essentially like a buffer between me and my service delivery team, right? Because ultimately I want to be CEO. I want to focus on the future of my business. And it's great that I got my clients to stop thinking they need to come to me for everything, but I've still got my team coming to me for everything internally. So I'm still essentially wrapped up in a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So building out this leadership team allows me to empower them and give them ownership to manage the team in a way where I don't have to be interrupted for every little thing. So that was something that we developed, in 2020, that we're still further developing, where ultimately it's delegation of roles. I would love to get to a size where I don't have shared roles anymore. Right? Because when there's shared roles, something always gets less attention, or if you've got someone doing two different roles, the one that's on fire is always going to get the most attention, and then that other one isn't really paid attention to. And one of our most recent hires is finally a full-time client success manager, and that's going to be great for us, because we have been focusing on our clients so much, but that's kind of been a shared role, client success, across our team. And now we have one person that can own that, right? And even be an advocate for the client, almost be like on their side, telling us what we're doing wrong and how we should improve as a company to give the client better service. So that's a huge thing. Another item this year that I'm excited about has to do with business intelligence and really understanding the levers that are driving our business and producing the numbers that we're seeing. And so I'm looking at integrating with some tools that can do a deeper dive into my PSA and give me dashboard interface, reporting on things like, what clients are we spending too much time on? What clients are we not spending enough time on? Profitability across clients, individual, or even across lines of business individually with a client. Profitability even on my service delivery team, who's outperforming, who's underperforming. And so being able to, do a deeper dive into KPIs that we can easily see at a glance is going to allow me to steer the company a lot better. I shouldn't say me, our leadership team, right? Ultimately. So that's probably the other big thing that I'm excited about this year.
It seems like it's catch-22. If you go back to the first point around the management team, it's great when you get to a point that you can have a leadership team or have a management team in place that you can start delegating tasks to, and they can take some of the burden off your shoulders, and your engineers can start going to them rather than coming directly to you. But then that's a catch-22 is that management team or leadership team are not doing billable hours, or they're not servicing your clients directly. And so then you've got this seesaw approach around you need more engineers to service customers because that's where you make your money, but then you need more customers coming in to support the revenue to then cover the costs from a leadership team. So you're in that fine balance of, and I dare say from a profitability standpoint, it'd be like a kind of break-even scenario, and you just need to get a few more customers on board, to get some engineers on board, and then once you hit probably the 15 to 20 person team, then it'll probably balance itself out. Is that how you're seeing it as well?
Yeah, I can, I'd be happy with 15, 2 more employees, right? But I think you're right. I mean, ultimately, I could see us being a lot more comfortable with roles completely delegated out at closer to that 20 employee mark. But this building a leadership team isn't easy either, because you're delegating tasks and you're hoping they get done the way that you would normally do them, which is why I'm seeing this strong need for business intelligence now, because I'm getting more and more detached from the company, and I need to be able to quickly see how we're performing and where we need improvements. Otherwise, I could be handing this company off to a team, assuming everything's going great, and then when it comes to look at the numbers, I'm like, well, why do our numbers look like this? Great. Now do I have to get back involved and start undelegating things and taking things away? You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, I totally get it. I've been there, done that before, and yeah, it's a struggle. It definitely is a seesaw approach, and sometimes it can take 6 to 12 months. Like sometimes it can take a couple of years to figure that out, and make sure you find the right people as well, right? So it's not just about picking a person. Yeah, you can be in my leadership team. Let's train you up. It's not for everyone. So it's also finding that right balance. The business intelligence, I'm keen to dive in a bit into detail around this. Not just business intelligence, but innovation as a whole. And so you're wanting to leverage technology to give you the insights you need to then propel your company forward. And definitely from a business owner, and especially someone with an innovation mindset such as yourself, you definitely want to do that, right? And so, but then there's another catch-22, which is what you want as an owner and as someone who wants to push the company forward versus what the engineers and what the team wants. Have you started to think about this and how you want to approach innovation in this next 12 months for your business?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely, from an operations standpoint, right? Identifying our our current workflows. How automated are they? What are the manual processes that we still have in order to complete a workflow? Is there, do we have single source of truth data, right? I mean, every MSP struggles with billing and understanding, okay, my vendor's billing me for X amount of licenses. I need to make sure I'm billing the client for that amount of licenses. And so, or maybe there's systems where there's duplicate entry because we don't have a good API integration and human error that can come along with that. So that's something that we're polishing up, and I have my service delivery manager. Essentially, it's one of his projects, because he is wrapped up in the day-to-day and can see that stuff, where we're analyzing the different tools we use and trying to figure out ultimately, how can we eliminate the noise, right? I mean, whether it's noise from security alerts or noise from tickets or emails. Like, we've moved heavily into Teams where I would love to get to a point where my guys only have to check email maybe once or twice a day, because nothing in there is coming in as urgent, right? They're living in Teams essentially, right? And so I think when you look at the remote workforce capabilities of an MSP, a lot of that has to go into how are you communicating with each other? What systems are you using? And how well do they integrate? And how clean is the data, right? I'm going through this other thing too now, where I'm looking at, okay, I've got, what's the cost of a dirty record? They've got the 110-100 rule, where, if you don't have clean records, that's costing you money every time you touch that record, or maybe you use a record that's incorrect, And so there's a lot around business intelligence and integration that I'm looking to help automate our workflows and eliminate room for error ultimately.
And how's that gone for your team? Because I know from an engineer standpoint, they can either love or hate the fact that you're going through change. And I totally agree. And like, obviously, what we're doing is trying to push the boundaries of innovation using our platform and getting everyone to, utilize Teams on a daily basis, which was a really interesting point. You kept referring to Zoom calls previously, and now, but everything's going into Teams. Like, that transition from traditional older tech, well, Zoom's, but I say older technology, they still do a great job. But when you got Teams, you can do everything in Teams. But like, that transition for an engineer to then start adopting the new processes in your business, because you're not just implementing tech, you're implementing new processes. How have you found that so far, or what do you perceive it to happen in the next 6 to 12 months?
So I would say I'm lucky to have a team where we've had this kind of natural organic culture that was good, that we harnessed and helped improve over the past several years. When I think back to our security incident, I was worried about employees walking off the job because of the level of stress, right? We made it through that together, and I didn't let any employees go, even though we had a major loss. Like, my reward to my employees was like, I'm not letting anyone go, even though, the numbers are telling me I can't afford, one or two of you right now. We're going to get through this. And that was followed by me having PTSD about security and really going a little overboard with a ton of changes that they experienced in 2018 and into 2019, just with security tools. And I look back at it now, and I feel like it was definitely a little torturous for them to experience that much change in a short amount of time. But they, and I did have to kind of pull the reins back. When I finally got my leadership team developed, one of the things I had them do was get feedback about me and how people think I am as a boss. Like, I want to know where I can improve. And the number one complaint was like, too many tools, too many changes. So, I took that, and now I'm a lot more interactive with my team. Like, before we take on a new tool, they're buying in on it. They've given me the green light. Yes, we want to use this. I'm using that approach now versus just stuffing a tool down their throats. But I think with how resilient my staff is to stick together through the hard times, to have already been through a ton of change because of my PTSD with security. Now we're getting into more operational efficiencies and tools where they can even see how they're performing as an employee better, right? Understanding what are areas I can improve as an employee. So they're definitely, they're actually fairly welcoming to a lot of the things we do, mainly because before we implement it, we include them in the discussion and talk to them about the why and get their input. And we want them to help us develop these workflows, right? So that they have ownership and buy-in in a lot of these changes that we're doing now. And that really helps with the transition.
But, it's great to hear that, honestly. It's really humbling because when we're running our innovation consulting business for such a long time, helping businesses transform into what we call the 21st century with technology, the biggest frustration, not just for us, but also for the business people adopting that change and being a part of that process and, you know, having a say in the entire process of what you're going through. So it's amazing that you've done that. You're forced to do it, but it's good that then you listen to the engineers to go, well, just hold off a back. Let us add our 2 cents into it. It's great that you've been able to, I guess, progress through that process and adopt what they're saying, which is now part of your, you know, it's part of your process now, which is, hey, we're thinking about doing this. How about go do some research, test this out, tell me if it's any good or not, which is really cool. That's the same process you went through. So when you were one of the first foundation members of our product a fair while ago, when it was really in its basic MVP stages, and so you're adopting a technology, or I guess you're adopting a technology from what it can be in the future. How did your engineers take that? Because it definitely wasn't a fully fledged out platform that had all its bugs and everything ironed out. So you took something on very early stages. What was the opinion you got back from your staff around doing it that way?
So, you know, anytime we implement a change in a process, we try to do a soft transition instead of just like a hard transition. So we didn't necessarily cut off the old ways of doing things in case they ran into an issue with this new workflow, right, or this new tool. And I found that to be good because it makes them more comfortable with, you know, moving forward with the change and knowing that worst case scenario, they have a fallback that's not going to cause them a delay in whatever they're trying to perform. And I'm on several partner advisory boards with, I'm pretty much on all of Datto's partner advisory boards. So the other thing is they're kind of used to seeing new products because I get a lot of the new stuff from these vendors with partner advisory boards where we're helping them design their roadmap, initially test it out, and they actually like being a part of that. So they're willing to deal with the quirks as long as it's not something we're rolling out to a client, right? They want to, you know, and I think that's another benefit too, is that seeing a product in its early stage, seeing that it can change quickly, right, and improve quickly, helps build their faith in these products to where even if out of the box they don't do the whole alphabet, everything that's needed, they know that, hey, we've got a good relationship with this vendor. We're able to give feedback. They're listening to us, and so they would rather use, you know, a product like that versus something from a company that could care less who we are and would never listen to any feature requests that we might have.
That's really interesting.
You know, as long as it's not technology. Yeah, as long as it's not, you know, half-baked technology we're deploying with our clients, and then they have to hear it from our clients, they're open to that, right?
So they're aware of the customer-facing opportunity that's coming shortly. So I'm really keen to get their opinion and hey, actually, I'm keen to understand the approach you're going to go through as you start rolling out the customer-facing, I guess, functionality of our platform in the coming months. So. Yeah, keep me posted on that. I'm curious to see how your engineers adopt that. So if we talk about innovation as a whole, you're definitely at the forefront when it comes to, you're part of these advisory boards. You wanted to test and try every latest technology and tool that you can think of to assist your business and also your clients. any particular category you could think of that you're really looking forward to, like from artificial intelligence to maybe all the way through to augmented reality or VR technology? Is there anything that you've got your eyesight on that you just can't wait for it to be available to assist your business?
I mean, really adopting more of the Microsoft stack. I really like a lot of the direction Microsoft's going, even though they are, enterprise focused. So not everything out of the box is necessarily MSP ready. I feel like they're making our lives a lot easier, especially around security and compliance. So, I would say, from an MSP standpoint, we rely heavily on that as our baseline, our single source of truth for, say, like users and devices we're managing, right? Azure AD and Intune. And so any other tools we're using, we're expecting to see integrations to where we can bring that data over and integrate with it somehow. So there's not really like a new technology that I'm excited about for my business in the realms of like AI. I do know there's a lot of security products out there making use of that, which is intriguing. But what I care most about is how I can become more efficient using the tools that we're using, which really comes down to deep integrations. I don't feel like a company needs to, like Datto, right? I don't feel like they need to buy every tool under the sun just to have deep integration, right? I know there's some other companies that have gone that route, right? You're just buying a bunch of tools. I'd rather see a company like Datto focus on their core products, their differentiating products, develop those out well, like they've done. And then if anything, rather than buy another company, develop a deep integration with it, where I've almost got single pane of glass management from their product into the other product, right? And so that's what I'm most excited about, is to see our MSP vendors ultimately work together more to not only provide a better level of security for the MSP industry and help give us guidance there, but also to integrate their products so that our lives are easier. Because ultimately, the more time we have to touch a tool or a client, on our fixed, MRR, the less money we're making. That takes our focus away from something else we could be spending on that would be, better for our company.
I feel like you've been listening to us too closely over the last 6 to 12 months and banging our head against the API. And can we just integrate completely, like you say, like it's this whole integration piece for any vendor, not just us, but any vendor integrating into, in this case, a PSA and an RMM tool. It's got to be solid. And if it's not solid, things break. And if things break, customers, in this case, companies like yourself are unhappy because what was working yesterday wasn't working today. Welcome to technology. But once you've got that solid integration and you can dive on into, like, you think of Datto's tools, right? They're huge. They do everything plus more. And MSPs are probably using 10, 20, 30% of these products. And so there's an opportunity to do a deep integration with these platforms and work more closely with the API teams to allow that deep integration to just come to life. And I agree with you, that would be amazing, not just for us, but also for the entire MSP community, because you've got these amazing platforms starting to spur up. And I've locked in multiple meetings with other MSPs who have been running their MSP for 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be. And they've got a pain point in their company, and now they've launched a platform to solve their own pain point, but then also to help other MSPs. And so if there can be a really good ecosystem to support that entire journey, then it's just a win-win. It's a win-win for Datto itself, it's a win for vendors, and it's definitely a win for the MSP. So I definitely agree with you, but I feel like that you've been hearing us hit our head against the brick wall for the last 12 months with those points you just mentioned. So I appreciate that. So I like your point around the data analytics, and that's where you really want to see, I guess, where your MSP can get to is having these dashboards to show you all the information you need to be able to determine who's profitable, who's not profitable, what your engineers are doing on a daily basis, how you can make them more efficient. So that's really cool. Is there any particular tool that you've seen on the market that can help with this, or are you still in the initial investigation periods?
So I'm looking at one that's been around for a while, but they've primarily been in the ConnectWise space. It's called MSPCFO.com. And it out of the box looks like it's got everything I need. And I'm doing my first integration next week, so I'm excited to see what kind of data it pulls through. There is an understanding that your dashboards and reports are only going to be as good as your data, right? And this goes back to not only do we have clean data, right, in our PSA, what's old, what's not labeled right. But also, are we tracking things in the PSA in the proper manner to be able to display it the way we need to, right? And the PSA is such a powerful tool. I find a lot of MSPs, especially the ones that are getting started out in the early maturity stages, they're really just using a PSA for like ticketing, and then maybe contracts for billing, right? And there's really a lot of other components that go along with how you're tracking your time, what work types are you using, how are you billing your clients, what contracts are you putting your time against, what contracts are you putting services against, do you have your costs baked into there, right? If you're just billing for services, you may not even have your costs of those services added. And so there's a lot of things that I'm sure that once we integrate this, I'm going to find little holes in the fact that, hey, we weren't tracking this just quite right, or doing this. So that's going to be a project. It's not going to work out of the box, but it will at least allow us to mature more in using our PSA to where it can be a better tool for us.
I guess that just goes to show, all very similar to the conversation we've had so far today, is this is around all tools, right? So tools are only good as the data you use, and I feel like there needs to be some sort of tool to get the data in a better position, so then you can integrate with these other tools. And it's just like, what tool? There's thousands of tools, right? So what tool do you want to go and invest into, and what's going to get the best bang for buck for you and your business? And I dare say you've seen them all, the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to the different tool sets.
So there is an advisory council I'm on for a company named Gradient MSP. And it's Colin Knox, who used to own Passportal, has started it. And that's one of their first projects that they're doing. And in fact, I have a meeting with him in the next couple of weeks where we're going to do the integration. And he's literally developing a product to help us clean up dirty records in our PSA.
Perfect. We'll definitely shout out to him then, because if you can go through this period of time to get your, as an MVP, as a guinea pig, as you might call it, in your business, and it's going to clean up your data, then it's a no-brainer, because you're not alone. I'll tell you that, Brian. Like, the amount of conversations I've had with MSPs around the world, everyone's in a very similar position, because we're relying on our staff, we're relying on engineers to do admin work, and we don't like doing admin work. Come on, it's not a part of our team. So this tool can take away the administrative work for engineers on that front. Then that's a no-brainer. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I might leave you with a final question, and we're coming up to the hour, so I appreciate your time on this. This has been awesome. So in your opinion, when we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly in the MSP world, is there any particular pinpoint you'd want to focus on that would describe that in a few words or less? Whether it is the good, it's the bad, or it's the ugly, it's in your context, what you think would be an amazing way to end this incredible conversation.
Sure. So, I'll just use the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I mean, when I look at the MSP industry, I would say the good, the great thing about it, why it's attractive and people want to get into it, is that recurring income, right? The MRR. And it's kind of unique. There's big VARs that are trying to figure out how can they get in that space, because they're losing market share to MSPs, right? And it's a business where you get to a certain maturity and a certain size, and you really don't have to take on more clients if you don't want. You could just focus on your existing client base and help them grow and grow with them because of that recurring income model. You're not in a position where you constantly feel like you have to chase the next client to make your numbers. The bad is we are on the front lines of an information war right now. We should be treating each other like allies instead of competitors, working together, sharing ideas on how to protect, businesses who are getting targeted. Everyone's getting targeted, really. And so, when you think about a cybersecurity landscape and, who are the people kind of in the front lines, if you consider it a war, it's the MSP industry. So it's very important that you start thinking about security first. In fact, that's what we call ourselves, a security first MSP. And everything we do, we're considering the security implications of it. The ugly is the fact that it can get stressful. You have to deal with personalities, right, with clients. And as you grow, when you're starting out, you're taking on clients that later you regret and wish you hadn't taken on, but you had to in order to make those numbers with your growth. So, you have to do things that almost feel like you're punishing yourself, you're making sacrifices. It's a moving target. I would say 2 to 3 years from now, as I step more into the CEO role and less VCIO, which I still do a bit of VCIO, I'm going to start losing touch with today's best technology, right? I mean, if someone, who works for an MSP and then takes maybe a 3 to 5 year break doing something else is going to come back and be behind. They're going to need to catch up. So, it may look great from a business model and income, but behind the scenes, you're on the front lines of a cyber criminal war, and it's not pretty getting to a point where you do feel like you can sleep better at night, right? I mean, that's really ultimately, we all want to be able to sleep better at night, and that takes a lot of work to get to yourself to a point and your clients to a point where you're not worrying about things.
Yeah, amazing way to finish it. And I think that this goes to show that there's so many moving parts when it comes to an MSP. You really have to put your what I guess fire do you want to put out first? And as you've experienced and explained the last 10 years of your MSP journey, there's always one thing after another. And this last, especially since COVID, man, I agree with you. Since COVID hit, not so much about the pandemic, but from a cyber war perspective, it's just gone bananas. And how do you stay on top of that? When these vendors are using artificial intelligence. I say vendors, these I don't know, how do you say it in a nice way? These gangsters, these cyber gangsters who are targeting businesses, they're using artificial intelligence. So how do you stay on top of that? But I think let's have a complete separate conversation just on security, because I could take this in so many different rabbit holes. But I definitely agree with you. Thank you so much for being on this LinkedIn Live. I really do appreciate your time. And you're so generous with being open and candid with your entire business and where you have been, where you are, and where you're going to. So thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
I'll take you up on that. Cheers.